Well, hi there! This is a ferret, a creature that sleeps almost all of the time so that it can focus its energy into a laser beam of endearing mischief. As it turns out, this is pretty much the description of all weasels. Sometime back, Joseph Carter the Mink Man and I filmed a video about another weasel, the mink. And while we were together, we discussed whether the ferret was the lamest weasel. And a strong case can be made that it is. But that is like saying that the domestic dog is the lamest wolf. By many standards it is. But the domestic dog is certainly the safest and likely the best pet wolf there is. And the reality is that all of the things that make weasels so not lame also make them pretty unruly captives. The ferret is the only domesticated weasel, which makes it a much more manageable creature than most weasels. And even a lame weasel is a stinking rad creature. So is the ferret really the lamest weasel? Is it a good pet? And is it the best pet weasel for you? To figure this out, I have traveled to Colorado to meet Em from Emzotic and her amazing ferrets.
Well, hi everybody, my name is Em and I am Niffler's mum. I have the channel Emzotic where I'm a digital animal educator and I give you lots of facts about awesome creatures, just like the ferret.
Because we need to give them a score based on our 5 categories, which are handleability, care, hardiness, availability, and upfront costs. When it comes to handleability, we give the ferret a score of 4 out of 5. This is much higher than the 1 out of 5 that we gave the mink. So Em, I have had such a wonderful time handling your ferrets today. This is Niffler, right?
This is Niffler.
He is such a delightful creature. But can you just kind of give us a little overview of what it's like handling these incredible animals?
Sure. Well, handling ferrets, it really does vary. And a lot of it is down to the age of a ferret. So when ferrets are young or kids, they can be very nippy because they're exploring the world with their mouths. And sometimes if you continue to socialize a ferret, this will go away. Although in terms of play, they also like to use their mouths. They're very mouthy creatures. They like to explore your fingers with their mouths, very gently, of course, when they're well socialized. But the problem comes with when they are not properly socialized and their fear response can kick in, and that's when they can deliver quite a nasty bite. So really the handleability of a ferret comes down to, in terms of a pet, how much time and effort you're willing to put in to positive reinforcement when you're playing with your ferret.
That is so cool. Thank you for teaching us all about that. These are so amazing. But one thing I think that anybody considering getting a ferret and handling a ferret should know is something that we've definitely observed today, though I don't find it unpleasant. They are mustelids, and this whole group of mammals are known for their musking ability.
Yes.
And so they have an aroma, and if you handle a ferret, you too will have an aroma.
That's right.
Of ferret. I personally don't mind it, but I could see how I also don't mind the smell of a skunk, which is another mustelid. It's a very powerful aroma.
It is.
But it's not actually that objectionable. This is much, much milder than that. But it's in that same kind of a vein of, it's a musk and you're going to smell it, and a person could easily find it very, very unpleasant.
They could. And actually, here in the United States, every pet ferret that you get in a pet store is normally not only desexed, but also descented. And people mistakenly think that this means that they're going to be odor-free. They're descented, we won't smell anything. That's total rubbish. You are still going to be able to smell their bodily smell because they produce these oils, and that helps them to keep their coats really nice and clean. And ferrets, they love their bedding to smell like them. So they'll spend a lot of their time just rubbing all over their beds. And unfortunately, some people who have not educated themselves on the proper care of a ferret think that you can get rid of the smell by continually washing your ferret. Unfortunately, this causes them to have really dry skin. So if you are interested in keeping a ferret, I highly suggest that you go to a pet store and really just take a big whiff of this weasel. Because if you do not like the way that they smell in a pet store, you're certainly not going to like them when they come home. And for the health of the ferret, if you are planning on continually burning scented candles, using aerosols, or washing them, that's really going to reduce the lifespan of your ferret. So you want to make sure that you're prepared for the stink, because it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
I love that recommendation. So before you get a ferret, go sniff some ferrets.
Exactly.
And make sure you're on board with that, because it's part of the package.
It is.
You're so great. When it comes to care, we give the ferret a score of 3 out of 5. Mammals, perhaps with the exception of cats and a small handful of others, are just a lot of work. Ferrets are fairly reasonable mammals to keep, but that doesn't make them reasonable animals to keep. So, what is a day like as a ferret keeper?
Well, a day in the life of a ferret keeper, the very first thing I do when I enter the animal room is I have to go and deal with all of the lovely brown presents that my ferrets leave for me in the morning. That is number one. You have to spot clean every single day. That's where the real smell is in their poop. So I have to go in and spot clean them. Then I do a quick check to make sure that there's no open sores or tumors or lumps developing, because ferrets, unfortunately, are very prone to cancers. And as they get older, I'm constantly being very vigilant, making sure that both of my animals are very healthy. And then what I like to do is I like to let them out in their playpen where they have lots of different toys, and I just let them go wild, because ferrets have all this energy and they love to play. They're so playful, and he will jump and twist and turn and just play with his sister Dobby, and they have the best time ever. Then after that, it's just time to feed them. I feed them twice a day, in the morning and again at night. And then they normally go and take a really nice long nap, because that's the next thing that ferrets love to do, is sleep.
Oh, you're living the dream. So that seems pretty reasonable. They're crepuscular, so they're active dawn and dusk. And so by morning, you've probably got a lot of ferret stuff to take care of.
Yes, and it's very interesting. Just talking about ferret poop, it's very much like the texture of
Toothpaste?
Oh
boy.
Thank you.
You bet you'll never look at a toothbrush the same way again.
Exactly. So ferret droppings are a lot like toothpaste, and they're a lot like toothpaste rolls. They just continually push out as much as they eat. So they do produce a lot of waste, and as an obligate carnivore, they do very well on a diet of raw meat, which again can make for some smelly droppings, but it's so much better for the ferret.
I'm really glad you bring that up, because what are your feeding options when it comes to caring for your ferret?
Well, the vast majority of ferrets are imprinted on their food by the age of about 12 weeks. That tends to be kibble here in the United States. So what I would always thoroughly recommend is, when you bring home your ferret kit or your new adopted older ferret, is to start introducing little bits of raw food with their kibble, and slowly moving the amount of kibble from less kibble to more meat.
So what are your enclosure options?
Well, in terms of ferrets, people like to do lots of different things. The worst thing to do, and please don't do it, is buying a hutch, because that's not enough space. Lots of people think of the ferret as something like a rodent, thinking maybe that like a guinea pig, they could be kept in a hutch, and even for a guinea pig, a hutch is not a great idea. So there's a really great enclosure called the Ferret Nation. I highly recommend that. But what I really love to use, what we have in this room, is the Furplast Ferret Tower, which I absolutely love. It's 2 stories with a tunnel that they can use to get from the top section of the enclosure down to the bottom. It's nice and deep, so if you prefer to use a loose substrate over the more traditional fleece, then you can do that without worry of having your substrate leave the enclosure. And also what I have here is I have a pen around the actual enclosure, which means that I can leave the enclosure open and the ferrets can come out and have as much playtime as they want.
I love that pen. That was one of the first things I noticed when we walked in here.
Thank
it's so cool. All right, so if somebody is strongly considering a ferret, what do they really need to know about the care?
My top recommendation is, if you are considering a ferret, consider a pair of ferrets because most ferrets, not all, but most ferrets love the company of other ferrets. And there's nothing like another ferret to help a ferret keep clean because they will groom themselves. They'll tire each other out and they'll have a really amazing time together. And it is double the trouble, but also double the fun.
I love it. When it comes to hardiness, we give the ferret a score of 2 out of 5. It is generally the case that when you breed animals for very specific traits, you do it at the expense of others. Ferrets, due to their breeding, are very laid-back weasels. What they are not are particularly long-lived or hardy weasels. How long can a person reasonably expect their ferret to live? And what are some common health concerns that they might need to watch out for?
So here in the United States, the vast majority of ferrets are Marshall's ferrets, which is kind of like the mass-produced ferret that you'll get in every single pet store. And for these ferrets, I would normally say that a lifespan between 6 and 8 years could be expected. You might expect more from an independently bred ferret, but certainly Niffler and many of the other Marshall's ferrets are very well known for developing lymphomas and sores and different kinds of issues with their kidneys and their liver. So that's a little bit sad. They do come with a lot of health issues. But they're well worth the investment in going for veterinary care. And today, with advances in veterinary medicine, there are ways of keeping a ferret with, say, adrenal disease to live a much happier and healthier, longer lifespan than a few years ago.
That's awesome. 6 to 8, though, that's not as long as you'd like to hear, but it's long enough that it's worth it.
It is, definitely. They're such great pets.
When it comes to availability, we give the ferret a score of 4 out of 5. These guys are available at virtually every pet store, and occasionally you might be able to find one directly from a breeder, though there aren't very many of those. Most of them come from the same source. That said, they are illegal in some places, and so they're super available where you can get one legally. You just need to check your local laws. When it comes to upfront costs, we give the ferret a score of 3 out of 5. Ferrets themselves are not ridiculously expensive, so you're not going to pay a crazy amount for your ferrets. It's going to be the other stuff that's going to cost you considerably more. And can you kind of walk us through what some of those things are that you're going to need to buy when you get a ferret?
Sure. So when you first bring home your ferret, you might be struck by the enclosure setup cost. That can be quite high. You might be looking between $300 to $400 for a really good setup. Sometimes more because you want to add really nice hammocks and bedding and toys for your ferrets to play with as well. You also want to factor in a couple of $100 for veterinary visits because you want, anytime you bring home a new pet, to get them checked out by a veterinarian just to make sure that they're as healthy as you hope that they would be when you bring them home. And then that also comes with a couple of shots as well. If you want to go outdoors with your ferret, they will need distemper and rabies shots. So you want to make sure that you check your local and state laws to make sure that you're able to take your ferret outside, as well as to keep them up to date with their distemper and rabies shots. And then with the food can be quite costly as well. The kibbles are not particularly expensive because it's a kibble, but if you want a really high quality diet of fresh meat, then you might need to find a fresh meat source like a butcher, for example, or one of these meat subscription services.
That's fantastic. I think these guys are totally worth it. It's easy to get an animal and then not think about what it's going to need, but this is an animal that is very clever, very high energy at very specific times during the day, and you're going to want to, if you're going to enjoy having a ferret at all, you're going to want to provide that kind of life for it. That's
exactly.
So great. And this is why we give the ferret an overall score of 3.2 out of 5. If your life is just not chaotic enough and you need something small, cute, and smelly to add that little bit of chaos that you crave, then a ferret, or better yet, a pair of ferrets, might be the perfect fragrant little thief for you. As always, like and subscribe. Be sure to check out Emzotic here on YouTube. We'll have a link down in the description. And we hope to see you real soon. By the way, our full conversation with Joseph Carter about whether or not ferrets are the lamest weasel is available to all of our Patreon supporters right now. These are the same people who made it possible for me to be here today, so thank you. So if you're interested in seeing that video or the literally hundreds of other bonus videos that we have for our supporters on Patreon, or you just want to support what we do here at Clint's Reptiles, please consider checking out our Patreon. And while we were together, we discussed whether the ferret was the lamest weasel. And a strong case can be made that it is.
That's so mean! He
Niffler's
doesn't even know what you're
okay.
saying.
He's a good boy.
He thinks you're telling the world that he's the coolest weasel in the world,
Oh,
not the lamest.
I'll make
Actually,
that.
if there is a lame weasel, he is literally the lamest of the lame. You couldn't get a better specimen for this video than Niffler.
Poor Niffler.
But we love you. You're really bad at being a weasel, but you're wonderful at being adorable. No,
He's a good draft stopper, actually.
you're so great. Yeah, we should have just laid him down in front of the door.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
What do you call him? Stinky Slinky?
Stinky Slinky.
Can I see the Stinky
Stinky
Slinky?
Slinky.
Yes.
This is the Stinky Slinky dance.
This is the Stinky Slinky. This supple spine's amazing. Look at that. Like, seriously, you can they'd be great at yoga because they just bend and they melt. Niffler especially is a very melty kind of ferret.
He's wonderful.
Mwah.
No, I want to see you do the dance.
Yeah.
Oh, the dance?
Uh-huh.
Stinky, slinky, stinky. It's like migrating across the screen.
You are the best.